Human trafficking is a human rights violation. It is declared by the United Nations that this is a crime against a person, that no person in the world should have to go through this. It's a form of slavery.
It was a documentary on human trafficking. It was here in the downtown area. And I remember being floored while I was watching that documentary because it was of my hometown. And I didn't expect that. And then as I'm watching, it was someone I knew. It was someone I had worked with. And I had no idea that that was part of her story. And so I realized that this is everywhere.
These are victims. They're human trafficking victims by legal definition. These are individuals that have experienced intense trauma throughout their lives. Almost every single individual that I've come into contact with has had some sort of childhood sexual abuse or childhood abuse in their history. And when somebody says that they love them and that they promise them that they can make a life for them, that they'll be able to do better for themselves, they latch onto that promise. And in the reality, they end up being exploited.
And so I think the solution is grace. The solution is to always be present. The solution is to pick up the phone calls, even when you realize this is the 10th time. Here at the Hidalgo Community Center, World Impact's place in the Hidalgo neighborhood. And this space is used for a lot of things, but tonight we're specifically focused on reaching out to folks on the street, the women that are out there through our Belmont outreach team. And then we also have an apartment where we help survivors that are trying to get from the street to a program or back home, whatever the case may be. And so we have a group called the triage team that helps work with that.
I was struggling just in my own personal faith, just wondering why does God let such awful things happen? And when I walked out on the street, it was so clear, He's the only answer. He is the only answer for what I was seeing. All of the pain and devastation I was seeing, He was the only one that could make any of it better.
Well, we always start with prayer because we really want to be focused and we want our hearts to be in the right place. So we spend about an hour in prayer, just getting all this stuff together because we really want to go out there with the tools and the resources for them.
And then we just drive down the street, park the car, and start walking. We have little goodie bags that we've put together, and it has a card on there with information. They can contact people if they need help.
It's a little different for me. I start here with prayer with them, and then I go with them to Belmont. But when we're walking, I walk behind the women that are, most of the time I'm just praying about the night and just everything that can be going on. And then I'm also paying attention to everything around us, what that looks like, who's around, who's paying attention. If I see a car circle several times, am I seeing the same faces?
I think of one story that I can share is a gal who literally kept the card that we had given her on Belmont for a year. And she knew that she wanted to, at some point, she wanted to leave the life. And so when that time came, she had a number to call.
I work with the triage team, so I'm a part of a group of women that spend time with the survivors that we have that come through those apartment doors. And sometimes that means listening. Sometimes that means creating new pictures in our mind with art, with music, with crafts, because often these women have pictures that their brains won't stop replaying, so we create a new picture. It's amazing to see how much community can happen in the apartment, and I've just learned that community is so important to healing, and that healing can happen in community when it's grounded on the unconditional love that Jesus has shown us, and that's just blown my mind. It's been awesome to see how God works in that way.
We need to take special care of that, of looking at individuals not as someone that we can just have for their story, but someone that can be in our community. And the well does a really good job of that. I have survivors that I've worked with that have just ended up at the well, and they have grown from that community, and that community has given back to them. They've been able to give back to it, and they have found faith, and they have found God in the people that they've met there and the experiences that they've had.
we do know that we see lives changing, we see movement happening, and that's what we want to continue to focus on, is how do we just extend that as God gives us more people for these teams. Is there another apartment that could open? Is there another street that could be reached out? And that we can do it in that same deep way of really building intentional relationships. And when I started 26 years ago, there wasn't anything really. You know, there were lots of people praying and doing stuff on the street, but we didn't have safe houses, and we didn't have, the women were considered criminals, and if you wanted to come out, you basically had to go to jail to come out. So I'm excited about where we are, and I know people just kind of entering into the picture now, they don't, I think about the people who were here 50 years ago praying for these kinds of things, and we get to be a part of that chain, and it's just really a beautiful thing.